Welcome to Art Bell, Somewhere in Time. Tonight featuring Coast to Coast AM from February 24th, 2000.
From the high desert and the great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening and or good morning, wherever you may be across this great land of ours. It is great indeed from the Tahitian and Hawaiian Islands commercially eastward to the Caribbean and the U.S. Virgin Islands, south into South America, north all the way to the pole and worldwide on the internet. This is Coast to Coast AM, and I'm Art Bell. Well, how did it go for you last night with the ghost teeth, huh? That was some program, wasn't it? Tonight, if we're lucky, we're going to be talking with Seth Shostak, and he's down at Arecibo in Puerto Rico. And if we're really lucky, you see, there are two live webcams down at Arecibo. You know what Arecibo is, right? You saw the movie Contact. You saw the big dish built into a canyon in Puerto Rico. The world's largest radio telescope built literally into a canyon. It's an amazing, amazing thing. It's almost like one of the wonders of the world. And there, Seth Shostak, who heads SETI, is listening for you-know-who from you-know-where. It's the Real SETI program, and they are collecting data that is, by the way, used in the SETI at Home project that we have going as well, and we'll be interviewing Seth, and I hope we can get through. And we might even talk him into getting in front of a camera, and maybe better yet, giving us a little tour live of Arecibo inside. Now, obviously, it's dark at this hour, and so we're not going to get to see the big dish out there unless he has some JPEGs he can send along. Interesting. And so maybe that next hour, at any rate, we now have, at this moment, the twin, that's right, two of them, live webcams from Puerto Rico up on the website. If you go to my website and you go down into the guest area and you see tonight's schedule with Seth Shostak from SETI, you'll see the webcam, live webcam there, and by gosh, you'll get twin webcams. And you can even manipulate them around a little bit. It's really pretty cool. That's coming up next hour. This hour, a couple of things. For example.
SETI, S-E-T-I, stands for the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. It's a word that describes a wide variety of different kinds of searches which are being made all over the world for evidence of the existence of other civilizations in space. Almost all of the searches that are being done with telescopes. Our goal is to detect in those searches radio and radar transmissions from other civilizations. The first result that will come from this is simply the knowledge of other civilizations' existence. That, of course, would be an enormous milestone in history of human civilization. Why do we search? It is because everything we know about our universe, about our planetary system, and about the origin and evolution of life on Earth seems to say that all of these things will result in completely normal processes that occur in our galaxy. No special phenomena, no freak events are required for our civilization to exist as it does. Given the enormous number of stars in our galaxy, like the Sun, it follows that there should be many, many civilizations in our galaxy and in other galaxies. If they practice technology as we do, they are detected. This is a recent development. Until a few decades ago, our instruments were not sensitive enough to detect reasonable manifestations of intelligent life. That is, they could not detect the same sorts of signals of power and others that we ourselves radiate. However, we have crossed an important threshold in that we have developed instruments which can detect signals no stronger than we radiate across the vast distances which separate the stars. In fact, our present radio telescopes, if used properly, can detect Earth-like signals all the way from the far side of the galaxy. Therefore, it is reasonable to search. There would be an enormous intellectual payoff from the detection of other civilizations. Their mere existence is a very important fact, which will influence our thinking, our philosophy, our outlook on life. We will learn almost certainly facts of science, evolution, biology, and other places, which we could not learn by any other means. We would see what the prospects are for the future of civilizations, what becomes of them. How do they manage their resources? What ways of life do they adopt? All of these things are interesting and right. At the same time, they provide very useful information in developing our own resources and planning our own activities.
How can man come from these statements that they are the subject? Not the only civilization. It's not the assumption, scientifically speaking, that there must be other civilizations.
Our theoretical understanding of the formation of stars and our observations suggest that stars are not alone, but must be accompanied by another object or objects. Indeed, stars, these are double stars. We believe what we have seen, our theories again, that the remainder of the stars, or indeed even some of the double stars, are accompanied by planetary systems. The theory of planetary system formation says that some of the planets in these systems will be similar to the Earth, and there's now been a multitude of experiments conducted in the chemistry laboratories here on Earth, which show that where you have a planet like the Earth, develops quite spontaneously and with vigor. It does not require any special circumstances for the first steps of life to develop. We have not traced as yet the development of the first living construction of molecules of life, but not the first living. But we are close to that. And again, there doesn't seem to be any special circumstances required to rise to a living thing. Once you have living things, they compete for resources, ecological missions, and this is a driver for evolution to proceed. And so the picture is one where surely very complicated organisms will develop many places. Looking at the history of our own creatures, we see one thing which has always that intelligence may develop itself into technology. Question, very profound question. That is, what should you say? Messages for the benefit of other civilizations. And there are a lot of different ideas but one idea which is large is that we want to tell the other civilization the special things about us and our system. We need not tell them basic science or magic if they know all that. It's silly to tell them what the value of pi is, or what the structure of the carbon atom is, or something like that. They know all that. We're not sure that they know what our biology is. It's possible that our basic biology, the system of proteins and DNA, is universal, but we don't know that. If it isn't, then it's very interesting to me, because it's an extremely effective way to make a living thing. So in any case, in designing the Arecibo message and other messages, we've always tried to put in only those things which are special, we think perhaps unique to us. To describe most of those things, you have to describe things in numbers, quantities counted. So that in most of the messages, the very basic part is to establish a number system so that you can tell them things in numbers. example, in the Arecibo message, we thought it desirable to describe the structure of DNA. And to do that, you have to give a chemical formula. And to give the chemical formula, you have to give the numbers of carbon atoms and hydrogen and oxygen, whatever, different molecules. And so you need numbers. We also thought they would be interested in knowing how many there are of this. So again, you need to give a number, to give our size. So that's why it seemed very desirable, but it's essential desirable. It implies a number system. In fact, the number system used is the number system binary arithmetic system, actually the simplest system.
So, see how the audio is here in a moment. But, we have webcams up, or I should say, Arecibo has twin webcams up right now. So that during the course of the interview, if you go to my website at www.artbell.com and scroll down to the guest area, you'll see Seth Shostak's name and SETI, and you'll see the webcam there. You click on that, and I think we've got Seth seated in front of one of the webcams, or in front of one of the webcams. I'm not sure. I'm seeing a little boy there, and I'm seeing a fellow in a green shirt, a pair of Levi's, and a whole bunch of computers. Now the photograph is changing a little bit. Ooh, that must be Seth, because now he's on the telephone. So in other words, we're going to have live webcam available for you on the website, not just from Seth, but from myself as well. You'll be able to see both sides of the interview. program.
It's good to be here. I'm sort of curious, actually, which of the steady cams you're looking at, because there's one sort of a frontal view and there's one sort of a back view.
All right, I'm going to tell you what I see. I see you, I believe. Do you have a green shirt on and jeans?
I definitely have a green shirt and jeans.
Okay, that's you. I see I see you from behind, and then I see a lady next to you in one frame. In the other frame, I see a kind of I wouldn't call it a frontal view. I'd call it a kind of a side view of you, and you look great. And then I see the lady next to you in what would that be? Kind of a blue coat, it looks like?
Exactly right.
A blue or even almost purple, I would say.
Exactly. Okay, well, you've got both views, so there's nothing more to be seen.
So in other words, this is amazing. It's amazing for me. I guess my audience has done it a lot because, they've been watching me up on the webcam for years, but I have never been able to sit and watch the person I'm interviewing. This is really cool.
I should explain who this second person is, by the way.
Please, yes, please.
Yeah, this person sitting behind me is Jill Carter. And for anyone who saw the movie Contact, and I'm sure you have because you often ask people if they want to take a ride.
Maybe 10 times, 15 times.
Well, 10 times. So they should give you a bulk discount for that, Art. But Jill is very much the person that the Sagan character Ellie Arroway is based upon. In fact, she's showing her shirt. She's wearing a Contact shirt tonight. So when you see Jody playing the young radio astronomer who wants to make contact with our cosmic brethren.
There she is, huh?
There she is. She's right here. And it's actually her shift from midnight to 6 a.m. I take the early shift from 6 to midnight.
Well, this is absolutely cool. I mean, it's really neat. I guess I'm experiencing what the rest of my audience. Well, all right. So what I see, I think we've got Seth seated in front of all over the place. Oh, I heard a beep. Computers everywhere.
That's right. Well, that's the way this is done. Not to make too many allusions to Contact, but you may recall that the way Jody got in touch was by sitting on the hood of her sports car with a pair of earphones on.
That's right.
And all she had to do was wait about 30 seconds, and the aliens checked in with a signal.
Well, let's be fair. I mean, that was a scene, right? She'd been at it for a long time, after all.
Well, okay, you're right. We ought to give her credit for perseverance there. But in fact, of course, this system that you're looking at here is monitoring not one pair of channels,
right,
as Jody was doing, but 28 million pairs of channels simultaneously. So, of course, we told Warner Brothers that they really ought to have put 28 million pairs of earphones on Jody, but they refused to do that, saying that it would mess up her coiffure.
Well, listen here now. I understand how that makes it sound, but remember that people come here close to where I am in Las Vegas, and they hit megabucks, and they walk away. It does happen with millions and millions and millions of dollars. Maybe $50 million, who knows? Tremendous amounts of money. Doesn't happen very often, but it does happen.
Well, okay, fair enough. She might have been able to do it with one channel, but, we figured that's but that's a bit of a long shot. So that's why we try and monitor as many channels as we can. 28 million is not a magic number or anything. It just happens to be the number that this equipment can handle. But the consequence of that is we don't sit around with earphones because there's no way you could do that to keep tabs on that many channels. So that's why you see all the computers here. They're actually doing the listening, doing the listening, doing the listening.
Well, you're not going to believe this, and you never know what has happened. But guess what's come up on the Steadicam?
I don't know. Is it gone bonkers? Let's see.
It says forbidden. Your client is not allowed to access the requested object.
Is that right?
Yeah. And I imagine what's happened, Seth, is that, well, you tell me, Seth, when hundreds of thousands of people, potentially, at one time try to access your Steadicam, I guess we now know what happens.
I think we do, Art. You know, I was sort of wondering how you had done this, whether you had simply sort of copied our Steadicam on a regular basis over to your site, or whether you just sent them to our URL. It sounds like you did the latter.
Yes, we're sending them to your URL so that we can watch you live.
Well, I noticed that we have a system here monitoring Steadicam as well, and it seems to be hung up with half a picture being displayed. So this has been a good test, and you know, maybe the rest of this conversation will be done blind on this side. I don't know.
Well, listen, I think we've got Seth seated in front of hope that you know, maybe you can do a reset on that end. Maybe your internet provider is currently bleeding out, eating out, eating out, eating out, eating out,
You know, this is done from a series of computers back at the SETI Institute, which is located in California, of course. And unfortunately, it's about 11 o'clock at night there, so I don't know what's going to happen, but as you say, it's a good test.
So in other words, we might have destroyed what Well, it was great for about 10 minutes, I'll tell you that.
Well, it was good, yeah. Well, Jill is now worried that all the computers back in California have been brought to their knees.
Oh no, these are not the same servers, I hope, that do other important things for SETI.
Well, it's not for analyzing the data. That's all done right here on the site, actually. That's something that many people don't realize. Here, real time. So you don't have to worry about that.
What else is on the server that would be important if the server is potentially not working anymore?
Well, I think it stopped Jill's email, put it that way.
Stop her email?
Yeah.
And so your communications back there are gone.
That's right, we're isolated. But this place is pretty isolated anyhow.
The movie, of course, depicted it virtually in the middle of a jungle, or with a jungle very close by. Is that accurate?
It's pretty accurate. In fact, people often wonder why the world's largest radio telescope is located here.
Yes.
Now, the first thing I have to mention is that Puerto Rico is the most densely populated country. It's not a country, it's a commonwealth, of course, in the United States, but the most densely populated area in the world. It's equivalent to the population density of Holland.
Wow.
It's a small island. This island's maybe 100 by 60 miles or something, and there's something like 3 million people, if I remember correctly, that live here in Puerto Rico. So, sure, we're in the jungles, but jungle is kind of a relative term because there are houses all around, of course.
Right. Right, but still the jungle where the houses are not, you are in that country. It's tropical.
We are. We're in a part of the country that's sort of a pockmarked topography, a bunch of hills here. See, Puerto Rico is just a bit of limestone, some ocean bottom that's been tilted up because of, tectonic activity. And so you got this sea bottom topography, if you will, that gets washed away. It's just limestone, gets washed away by rain. So you got all these hills here. And, about 40 years ago, somebody was flying over these hills in a private airplane. They looked down and said, there's one valley down there that's pretty much a perfect bowl.
I think we've got Seth seated in front of one, covering the bowl with chicken wire. Is that in fact, because when you look at the Arecibo dish, it looks like more than chicken wire. It looks like it looks solid.
It is.
It is?
Yeah, the original incarnation of this thing, the first telescope they built, was made in a fairly simple way with fairly crude mesh. Something like chicken wire. It wasn't chicken wire, but it was, a better grade of chicken wire.
In other words, they were just probably trying to prove the concept at that point.
Yeah, and you're a radio amateur. You know that at low frequencies, the surface doesn't have to be that perfect.
Right.
But this telescope has been continually upgraded, and in fact, the dish now, the big reflecting surface, the big radio mirror, if you will, is aluminum panels, 18 acres of them, and they're pretty darn accurate. They're you're not allowed to skateboard on this antenna because
18 acres, did you say?
18 acres. Yep.
That's almost impossible for me to comprehend. 18 acres. I really want to come to Puerto Rico and see it. I want to stand where Jody did up there and look down. Is that possible?
Well, you should definitely do that. Actually, I recommend to anybody who comes to Puerto Rico, of course, given our experience here with the SETI cam, maybe we shouldn't invite the listeners to do too much here, but the next time that anybody comes to Puerto Rico, they should take the hour and a half drive that's required to come on up here. They have a wonderful visitor center, and it's an impressive thing. But I have to say, Art, curiously enough, when you sit up here in the control room, we have a view of the antenna, but it just doesn't look that impressive when you're up here. You have to walk down to the edge of the dish, and then you look over this thing. It's 26 football fields in size, more or less, and then you really get some sense of how mammoth this antenna really is.
Can I ask you a sort of a technical question?
Sure.
With an antenna that size, how much gain is there?
Well, the gain, you can work it out, but at the frequencies that we use, we look at microwave frequencies, which are...
Near hydrogen.
That's right. That's 21 centimeters. So that's at 1420 megahertz for the propeller heads in the audience.
Uh-huh.
And this experiment runs between 1,000 and 3,000 megahertz. So hydrogen's kind of right in the middle there. Anyhow, at those frequencies, the gain of this antenna is about 70 dB, which is to say 10 million.
Wow. people need to understand that every time when you're talking about dBs, we're talking about measurement of gain. Every time you have a 3 dB additional gain, you essentially double the power, either in transmitting or in receiving. I think we've got Seth seated in front of what?
That's right. And for people in the audience for whom, decibels are not their cup of tea, I mean, what it means is that if you were to put, say, a 1-watt transmitter here, it would be the signal that would be radiated would be the equivalent of using a transmitter of 10 million watts. If you were just broadcasting in all directions.
Effective radiated power.
Right, that's right, exactly right.
Wow! That is really impressive. So if you were to put a serious transmitter up with, I don't know, 100,000 watts, say, you would have a really strong signal, wouldn't you?
That'd be the equivalent of 10 billion watts. But in fact, there is a transmitter here. Because one of the reasons they built this antenna was not just to listen, but also to broadcast. Now, not to broadcast to aliens, although that's been done on one occasion, but to do radar mapping of Venus, to do studies of the upper atmosphere and so forth. So they have a.
You can actually radar map Venus.
Yeah, you can do that. You can do it with incredibly fine detail. Believe it or not, incredible accuracy with this thing.
That's unbelievable. Seth, listen, hold on. We're at the bottom of the hour, so you've got a break coming up. You're not even on camera, so just relax.
Okay.
From the high desert, this is Coast to Coast AM, and we've broken another one.
You're listening to Art Bell, Somewhere in Time on Premier Radio Networks. Tonight, an encore presentation of Coast to Coast AM from February 24th, 2000.
Seth Shostak, and he has a program called SETI. We're going to be talking all about that tonight in the big dish down at Arecibo. And now you may have an idea of how really big the dish at Arecibo is when you're talking about the number of acres of reflective. It's just astounding, and I am definitely going to go see it. We'll get back to Seth in a moment. 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 He's at Arecibo, actually at Arecibo right now, and I am now getting a picture again. So if just a few of you would go up there and take a look at a time, I'd be very thankful. Kind of staggering, you know. Think that somebody's doing it now. Try it in 10 minutes, and maybe we won't kill it. But I am indeed getting a photograph again, which is really cool. Go Seth, 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 go Seth. Welcome back.
It seems to be working.
Well, good. Yes, oh indeed. Yes, the picture is changing, and all right, so here I am looking at these computers, which are, I guess, actively processing data as it's being received.
That's what they do, in fact. We get these, we get signals all the time here, Art, as you can imagine. People often ask me, got any signals? Well, we got signals, at the rate of a few every minute, a few every minute, a few every minute, a few every minute, a few every minute.
Right. You occasionally, let me tell everybody how this show got planned. As usual, I got what seemed to be a really authentic message announcing to the world that SETI got a hit. And so, as I usually do, I wake you up in the middle of the night out there in California and ask you if it's the real thing. And you always tell me, called you this last time, you kind of paused like something had happened, but it wasn't what they were saying.
Well, that's true, Art, because what I was trying to remember was the name of the star you were referring to, and it was HD 51 blah blah something.
Right.
and I can't remember it now, but that had been an issue earlier this year when we started getting all sorts of emails.
I think we've got Seth seated in front of what?
And it took me a while to recall what the story on that thing was. It's unfortunately a fairly prosaic story. There was a reporter here when we were observing last March, and he was writing stories for the Florida Today newspaper, but it doesn't matter.
Right.
In any case, he wrote some story about how one signal came in, and for a while it was looking like a good candidate. But, after a couple of minutes of checking, it turned out to be just another telecommunications satellite or some other source of interference. It kind of looked like a satellite, actually. But in any case, it was terrestrial, not extraterrestrial. It wasn't AEP, it was AT&T. Okay, so, but this fellow wrote up the story, he made it somewhat dramatic, and the first half of the story described how everybody was getting excited, this really looked good. And then the last paragraph of the story said, but in fact, it turned out to be yet more earthly interference.
Right.
Okay, well, what happened in the fall, this last fall, around November, December, was that some online newspaper in New Jersey reran that story. because it's been put on the wire service by Gannett.
And let me guess, they left out the last paragraph?
Yeah, they left out the second half of the story. Exactly. So
that's how that one happened.
That's how that one happened.
All right. Well, I've got something I really have to ask you about. SETI is the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. And you guys, I guess, have to rent time. You pay for time on that gigantic dish down there. Is that correct?
Well, more or less. We actually don't have to pay. We were granted time. If you want to use this telescope, you can use it if you put in a proposal that meets, scientific criteria.
Oh, really?
It's a nationally funded facility. This telescope is funded with tax dollars, so it doesn't cost the astronomers money to use the telescope.
So somebody, at least in the scientific community, obviously feels seriously enough about the search that you're doing to allow you time on the telescope. So there's some pretty mainstream people that have to say yes.
That's true, although I have to say the time on this telescope was granted back in the days when our project was still part of NASA. That was ended in 1993 when a senator from your home state there, Nevada, killed the NASA SETI program.
Yes.
This time had been granted under the aegis of NASA, and that time was still ours, so we're using it.
I see. Well, maybe he just hasn't gotten around to that part yet.
That could be.
I surely do hope that they fund you instead of continually defunding you. If there's anything we're doing that's important, this is sure it. Anyway, here's a big one for you. I'm sure you're going to know what I'm referring to, but there was a report about a week. I think we've got Seth seated in front of one that in all probability we are the only complex life form there is. They suggested, there may be molecular level stuff and very low level stuff on some planets around some suns, but they sort of tried to make the case that we might be it. We might be the only light in all that we can see and all there is, Seth. You heard about that?
I did. In fact, I know what you're referring to. This is a book written by two fellows at the University of Washington, as a matter of fact.
Right.
Peter Ward and Don Brownlee, I believe.
Right.
And they've written this book, I think it's called Rare Earth, not to plug their book, but in any case, in which they do exactly what you said. They say, look, if you examine carefully the properties of Earth in our solar system and so forth, you might come to the conclusion that it's pretty darn special. And consequently, maybe we're pretty darn special. And if that's the case, then, we can sit here till the cows return home and not pick up a signal. That was their argument. But needless to say, I don't really agree with that.
based on what?
Well, if what they did was they sort of made a laundry list of things that are special about Earth. For example, I'll give you a couple of examples. They point out that Earth has a big moon, something you've no doubt noticed.
I've seen it, yes.
Yeah, right. Well, and that's a little unusual for an inner planet. I mean, Mercury doesn't have any moons. Venus, no moons there. But they're so small you could walk around them in an afternoon. Only Earth has this, pretty hefty moon. Now, it turns out that big moon does us some good, other than providing a subject for songwriters and stuff like that.
Yes.
It stabilizes the spin of the Earth. In other words, the Earth's north and south poles don't change very quickly thanks to the presence of that big moon. If it weren't there, they point out, the Earth's spin axis would constantly be flopping back and forth, ruining the weather and, kind of making Earth somewhat uninhabitable.
For life for our life, human life.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm accepting so far. I understand that. It would be not acceptable for human life. But what if the argument is that life is eternally adaptable, and that there might be life on a planet that would be disagreeably rotating, and some life form could evolve in a complex way, even under such conditions. Who knows what it would look like, but it would be complex.
Well, I have to agree with that. Actually, there are 2 points here. The first point, of course, to finish their argument is to note that
I think we've got Seth seated in front of what?
4 billion years ago, and I doubt that many of the listeners remember this, but roughly 4 billion years ago, there was a big hunk of rock, a big asteroid. I mean, this was the mother of all asteroids. It was about the size of Mars or larger. It slammed into the Earth.
Well, that's not an asteroid. That's a collision of planets.
Well, you could call it that. That's right. It's kind of a semantic argument at that point. But that's right. And the consequence of this ungodly collision 4 billion years ago was the moon. Now, that was just chance, of course. And what these gentlemen are saying is that, look, that means that planets with big moons like this, or rocky planets with big moons like our own, are going to be rare, because this accident isn't going to happen very often.
May I ask a question? Stupid one, probably, but one that a lot of the audience would ask. If something that big smashed into Earth, okay, a big piece of Earth kind of breaks off, I guess, and it becomes a moon. But the moon is round. And it doesn't seem logical to me that something smashing into the Earth, blasting something out into space to orbit the Earth would be round. It would be really irregular.
Right. In fact, it's more than irregular. I mean, what you get is bits. You get bits and pieces.
There ought to be all kinds of bits and pieces.
Yeah, it's mostly sort of like dust. I mean, it's like sand grains. But what happens is that these sand grains can go into orbit around the Earth, and then they begin, some of them begin to coalesce, make bigger lumps, just at first by random collisions. But once you get a lump that's about as big as the mountain outside your house there, then it's got enough gravity to pull in more of these sand grains, if you will, and make itself bigger and bigger. Okay, and if you build a body big enough, it tries to get all of its stuff as close to its center as it can. That's just gravity. And the shape that has all of its stuff closest to its center is a sphere. So anything that's big enough will be spherical. You may have noticed all the planets in the solar system are spherical, but little things like asteroids and so forth often are not.
Right.
Okay. So their argument was, look, you got to have this moon, otherwise you've got really awful weather on the Earth and probably not very interesting life. And since the moon was a big accident, maybe we're a big accident. All right, with me so far?
Yeah.
Okay, well, as Howard Hughes would not say, I don't buy it. Because, to begin with, it turns out that the Earth was spinning a lot faster before this big rock slammed into it to make the moon, 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 to make the moon. And so if that hadn't happened, if that asteroid had arrived at Earth 20 minutes earlier and missed our planet, so we didn't have the moon, the Earth would be spinning faster, which would be, bad news for the working man, because that means there would be maybe only 15 hours in a day or 10 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
But it means that it would be spinning so fast it would act like a pretty good top. And the pole wouldn't wander very much. So there's that. But beyond that...
I think we've got Seth seated in front of what?
And the Earth really had a 24-hour day. I mean, just take the worst case. So occasionally the North Pole tips over toward the equator. But it doesn't tip over from one moment to the next. It takes typically 10 million years to do that.
Right.
Now, in 10 million years, if, the climate's kind of changing where you are, no matter what you are, whether you're a salamander or a lobster or a human or an elephant, you can just sort of walk out of the way. Right?
Right.
You've got plenty of time to adjust. So, that doesn't strike me as a very very strong argument.
So
that's only one of the many arguments they have in the book.
Okay, so there are many arguments. It would be personally for me really sad to start to buy into that argument and imagine that we are all that is. I don't know why I'd be sad, but I would be very sad if I thought that was true. So you read the book?
I haven't got the book yet. No, everybody at the Institute ordered it en masse, I think.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm sure in some future funding hearing, that book's going to come out.
That's a possibility. But, these arguments, to be honest, have been made in the past, and that's the nature of science. Some people say yes, some people say no, say no, say no, say no, say no, say no. But it's also the nature of science to say, look, we can sit around here like sitting around in the bars of Spain in 1491, arguing about whether there might be another continent between Europe and Japan. And it makes for an interesting discussion, and maybe you could sell a few books about it too.
Yes.
But in the end, somebody ought to build the ships and do the experiment, and that's what Chris Columbus did. And so, in a sense, that's what we're doing. Look, nobody's going to know the answer to this question unless we try an experiment.
And that experiment is?
To look for the signal, because it's really impossible to prove that we're alone. I mean, I don't know how you would do that. How could you possibly prove we're alone in the universe? But what you can prove is that we're not alone, that we have company, and so that's what SETI's really all about. Sure, it's a long shot, and maybe there are reasons to think that we're the smartest things in the universe. I know a lot of my neighbors would agree to that. But in fact, it's the purpose of SETI to prove that that's not true by finding that intelligent life isn't extremely rare.
How much of what is to be surveyed has legitimately been surveyed? Can you attach a percentage to how much of, again, the only way I can phrase it is what could be surveyed has been surveyed?
Well, it's a little tricky because it depends on how, sensitive an experiment you want to do. Now, this particular experiment, Project Phoenix, does the most sensitive search of any of them. I mean, it's by far the most sensitive search ever been done. We've looked at 500 nearby stars. And, that's a pretty impressive number until you consider that there are 500 billion stars in our galaxy.
I think we've got Seth seated in front of 500 billion.
Yeah, that's about the size. So this is early days to say that.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And how long have you been? In the more modern terms, since you've had good computers to look at multiple frequencies, how long have we been looking? How many?
Well, the first modern experiment was done almost exactly 40 years ago by Frank Drake in West Virginia. But the experiments keep getting better because they're largely based on developments in computer technology. It's kind of like that PC you've got on your desktop there is probably more powerful than all the previous PCs that have ever sat on that desktop, right?
Oh, sure.
You put them all together and it wouldn't equal the power of what you got there now. Well, the same is true with SETI. The experiment we're running here is really, it just blows away all the previous experiments put together. And 5 years from now, I'll be able to make the same statement that the experiment we're running there will be better than all the previous ones. So. Better in some sense, and within 5-10 years, we hope to build a telescope that can be used 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for this, that will look not at 1,000 nearby stars like we're trying to do now, but will look at 100,000 or maybe 1 million nearby stars. And when you begin to talk about surveying 1 million nearby stars, then I think that gets quite interesting.
It really does get interesting, because the other numbers that have been bandied about by scientists would indicate that at that rate, you really are going to run into something. Or you should run into something, right?
And, absolutely. It depends on how many civilizations you think are out there, and of course, we don't know. But if you figure there are 10,000 in our galaxy, then examining 1 million good stars nearby should turn up one or two.
It would only take one, Seth.
Right.
It would only take one. Oh, why are we not actively transmitting? We've talked about this before, and you said there was this little brief transmission made some years ago. And there's been a lot of sentiment, Canadian scientists and others, who say, no, we should not be transmitting. It's dangerous.
Right. Well, Yeah, there's several reasons why we don't transmit, but your first point should be addressed. There was a transmission, a famous one, from this telescope in 1974. Before the last break, we were talking about the fact that this telescope, this big antenna, which is really is what it is. It's just a backyard satellite dish on steroids, if you will, does have a transmitter. Which is used, as I mentioned, for mapping things like Venus, asteroids. I've got on my lap here a picture of some asteroids.
I say. I think we've got Seth seated in front of what, but I mean, I'm talking about let's muster up billions of watts if we can,
Right.
and just blast out near hydrogen and see what happens. What is the argument? Actually, we're coming to the top of the hour, so when I come back, I want to ask you what the argument is against doing that, okay?
All right.
All right, stay right there. Seth Shostak is my guest. And again, I'll have him go over his background for you, but he heads SETI, that program that you saw in the movie Contact. And he's down in Arecibo right now, sitting inside the control room. You can actually see his picture live. If not too many of you go see it at once on my website. Just scroll down into the guest area. You'll see Seth Shostak's name, and you'll see the webcam links listed. So use it sparingly, but do by all means go take a look. From the high desert, I'm Art Bell, and this is Coast to Coast AM.
You're listening to Art Bell, Somewhere in Time. Tonight featuring a replay of Coast to Coast AM from February 24th, 2000.
We've got the real McCoy with us this morning. Seth Shostak is at Arecibo. You can see him there on a webcam if you want. I think we've got Seth seated in front of what? We're going to talk a little bit in a moment why we're not marshaling billions of watts on this giant dish this dish on steroids and calling others. All right, actually, before we ask the big billion-watt question here, we've got Seth from Arecibo in Puerto Rico on the line with us, and we've got video pictures refreshing now every 2 minutes, thank goodness. It's working again on the website. It's amazing. It's really kind of cool to be able to sit here and watch that. But a couple of things I want to get to first before the billion-watt question. It's this. Somebody just sent this, and he says, I saw this in a cartoon some years ago. It was simply two Native Americans standing on a beach. One says, "We have watched the horizon for many moons and seen no smoke signals. We are alone in the universe." And the camera, I guess, pans back. Barely visible on the horizon is the mast of an approaching ship.
We're hoping to see those masks pretty soon.
That's what you're looking for. Would you give everybody a short biography of yourself? Tell us a bit about yourself, your educational background, and how you got involved doing what you're doing.
Well, it's a long and fairly tedious story, so I'll just give you the 3-sentence version of it. My background's in radio astronomy, as a matter of fact, and for many years I was studying galaxies using radio telescopes. Now, when I was a student studying these galaxies, I was sitting alone in a radio observatory in California, in the Orange Valley, and it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and as was often the case in those days, I was completely alone. I was reading a book that had been written by a Russian physicist by the name of Joseph Shklovsky, but translated into English and added to by Carl Sagan, called Intelligent Life in the Universe. And the point of this book was that the equipment I was sitting there using in the middle of the night, amongst the coyotes and the cows, could be used to communicate from one star system to the other. And that struck me as a pretty exciting idea. Didn't do much about it, but it was a pretty exciting idea.
Very.
Well, then in 1980, I think it was, either 80 or 81, this woman who's sitting behind me, Jill Charter, happened to come to the university I was working at in Europe.
I think we've got Seth seated in front of what
he did for a living. Trying to eavesdrop on the aliens. And so we put together an experiment there in Holland to do a very simple SETI experiment where we looked at the center of our galaxy. And that's what got me started in this. Something like 10 years later, when I moved to California, I got a phone call from the SETI Institute, and they said, "Are you interested in a job here? Job here. Well, that's the way it went.
So you began working for SETI, not at the top, but no doubt, I don't know, rebooting computers.
Well, it wasn't quite that low on the food chain.
Your educational background is roughly what? What did you graduate from?
Well, I have a physics degree, an undergraduate physics degree from Princeton, and a PhD in astronomy from Caltech.
Okay, so you're Dr. Showstuff.
I am.
Yeah, Professor Showstuff.
But only my mom seems to use that title.
Really?
Pretty much.
Well, when you earn it, it should be used, in my opinion. So, Professor, you are. All right, well, the billion watt question, and that is, why not put a billion watts out in front of that dish, let it go out at, I don't know what the ERP would be, it'd be big, and we'd really blast the signal out there near hydrogen where we expect to perhaps find one. Why not send a signal out? What's the downside to that?
Well, in fact, I guess that the downside was revealed when the very experiment you're describing was actually tried. And it was tried in 1974. They had just completed one of the many upgrades of this instrument.
Right.
And they decided to sort of kind of almost a stunt, but in any case, as part of the celebration, they would attach one of the 1,000,000-watt transmitters that they got here to the dish. Yeah, 1,000,000 watts. And by the way, when you combine that with the gain of this antenna, which we discussed earlier, that means it's equivalent to roughly a 10 trillion watt transmitter.
10 trillion.
Yeah, it's a lot of power. I hope no birds were flying over the telescope when this thing is on, because
You'd roast them.
yeah, you catch them on rye bread and toast them on them. Anyhow, this thing was used for 3 minutes. The transmitter was turned on, and a message was beamed to a star cluster. That was in 1974.
Out of curiosity, what place is
The message was a picture, actually. I mean, it's always a question of what sort of message you should send. I mean, unlike in the movies, I don't expect that the aliens are going to speak perfect, uninflected English, as they
Right.
always do.
Right, I know.
Yeah, but so the message is just what you call a bitmap. You know, people who are computer literate know what a
I think we've got Seth seated in front of one.
it had 1,679 discs. Maybe it was 59, but anyhow, something like 1,600 discs. And the picture shows a schematic of our solar system and a picture of a human, very simple figure, something about DNA, you know, some very basic facts.
Do you think that this would be regarded as some indecipherable code by another intelligence, not necessarily similar to ours, or would it absolutely be recognized as an artificial signal?
Well, I think it would be absolutely recognized as an artificial signal because the nature of the signal is the kind of thing that only a transmitter could make. You know, pulsars, quasars, they don't make radio noise. They don't make the kind of signals that this was. So I'm sure they could recognize it as artificial. Now, whether they would figure it out or not, that's harder to say. The fellow who put together this message was Frank Drake, the very same fellow who started the whole steady business in 1960.
Right.
And I believe that Frank actually sent this message to 10 of his fellow academicians at the University of Santa Cruz, or wherever he was, Cornell. And apparently none of them could figure it out. But, the aliens may be smarter than your average college professor. I think that may be the lesson here. I don't know.
In view of that then, in the movie Contact, the initial contact was a sequence of prime numbers, which one would presume would be a pretty good starting off launching point. In other words, give them something that's absolutely unmistakable in rhythm. A bitmap would appear to be somewhat random if you didn't know what it was and how to decode it. So why not open up with something like the crimes as they did in that movie? Does that make sense?
Well, it may. People have suggested that, that maybe what will pick up from the aliens is the value of pi. That would identify it as an alien signal, all right, but I'd be really personally very disappointed if they sent us the value of pi. I mean, when I learned the value of pi in junior high school, or maybe earlier, I don't know. If that's the best they can do.
Yeah, but I mean, just something as sort of a headline to grab you and say, yo, artificial.
Yeah, that's true. Now, you might do that, but some people have thought about this, actually, Art. It may be early days to worry about what language to use if you're talking to aliens, but some people have thought about it, and the suggestions range from things like you're discussing, prime numbers, the value of pi, mathematics, or as in contact, where they kind of start with algebraic equations and work that up into a language. And that's certainly one possibility. Maybe it works out, but personally, I think the better thing to do would be just to send a picture dictionary. Here's your word, and here's the picture that it refers to. And, the pictures have to be universal, but maybe you could build up a vocabulary that way. And then
I think we've got Seth seated in front of us. There are those that, before I even get into that, this signal that was sent out, how far out is it now, and how far does it have to go, or has it already arrived at the target?
Well, it has not arrived. Now,
really?
No, because probably for political reasons, it was aimed at a star cluster called M13. It happens to be a big ball of stars in our own galaxy, but M13 is roughly 21,000 light years away. Now, that's a heck of a distance. That's farther away. That's more miles than I have on my Honda. Let me put it that way. 21,000 light years. Now, that signal, of course, is broadcast in 1974. So what is it? That's 26 light years away.
Oh, no.
So it's still got, 20,974
no.
So, don't hold your breath on that one.
Oh, I didn't know it was going to take that long to get there.
Well, you see, part of the deal here was not to get anybody upset.
Well, that definitely doesn't upset me.
No. Of course, there are stars, sort of along the path that maybe it'll intercept. And you never know whether there's, maybe interstellar spacecraft or something that are listening. And I don't know. That's a good question. I'll tell you one suggestion that's been made, which I find kind of interesting. And, I'll give you a simple thing. You could sort of send it 180 degrees away from the direction to the center of the Milky Way galaxy.
Away from?
Aim it in the opposite direction from the direction to the center of the Milky Way galaxy. You might say, why?
Why? I do say why.
Well, okay. There's going to be some civilizations behind us, farther away from the center than we are.
But
We're not quite in the boondocks. We're the edges of the city, as it were, in our galaxy.
I think we've got Seth seated in front of what?
There's still billions, so,
Okay.
billions and billions even. So that's, not such a small number. Now, the thing is that you're going to be, astronomers on some of those planets who are going to be interested in studying the center of our Milky Way galaxy because it's a very interesting place.
Oh.
So now you get it.
Yes, now I get it. In other words, they're going to be pointed past us toward the center because that's the most interesting, likely place to find a signal.
Well, certainly one of the most interesting places to study in our galaxy, for natural phenomena. And, of course, they might pick up our signal. Hey, we're here.
What interesting reasoning. You're absolutely right. Now, are there any interesting star systems that we would reach before 20,000 years doing that?
Oh, yeah, well, if you just ain't, blast it out in the direction opposite the galaxy, it depends on how big an antenna you use. This antenna might be too big for something like that because, it's so big it has a really, really narrow beam, so it'd be like shining a
laser kind of.
Yeah, when you really want a big Hollywood searchlight. So, it depends a little bit on the technology, but you could reach many millions, if not billions of stars this way, and some of them might be interesting indeed.
But there is that political consideration, and really, when you think about it, it is a diplomatic act, isn't it?
Well, I guess you could make that argument. I should mention the other reason that this isn't done very often. It's much more pragmatic. In fact, there are two other reasons. One is, in addition to this possible, diplomatic problem.
Yes.
The second thing is that I don't know how many civilizations there are in the galaxy. Obviously, nobody knows. But if there are, say, 10,000 of them, then that means that the nearest other civilization is roughly 1,000 light years away. Maybe 500, maybe 700, but, hundreds of light years, maybe 1,000 light years away.
This, folks, just simply means if you were to try to travel there, it would take you going at the speed of light 1,000 years to get there.
That's right, and it also means that our signal would take 1,000 years to get there. And if those aliens deign to reply, it'd take another 1,000 years for their answer to get back here.
Right.
So now 2,000 years have gone by, and my personal interest in the project will be somewhat less.
Yes.
And who knows what the funding will be like. So nobody's interested in winning the Nobel Prize 2,000 years from now, of course. So that's another reason it's not done. And then there's a third thought, and it's a bit more philosophical. I don't know how this is going to strike you, but it's that we've had radio for roughly 100 years.
Yes.
So we're kind of the new kids on the block.
Very short time.
And there are going to be civilizations out there that are way ahead of ours. I don't mean 100 years ahead of us.
I think we've got Seth seated in front of one.
Why not let them do the heavy lifting? They've had radio for millions of years. Let them create the signals. We'll listen.
All right, but there is this. Unless there is something in physics we don't know about yet, they are making the same calculations on the other end, 1,000 light years away. And if they're intelligent, using the same deductive reasoning that you're using right now. And so they're not transmitting because it's stupid, because they'll never live to get an answer, 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 live to get an answer.
So everybody's sitting around waiting for the other guy to call him up.
Yeah. Actually, let me tell you something interesting. I am a ham operator. And a lot of times on 10 meters, which is a worldwide band when it's open. The whole band is dead. It's deader than a doornail. I mean, you can't hear a signal. There's nobody there. And you call CQ, and about 1 million people answer you. They were all sitting there listening. And when you made that one transmission, they all heard you, and they all replied. But there's no way they'd have known that the band was even open, except for the fact that you made a transmission. Doctor, hold on. We're at the bottom of the hour. All the hams out there know what I'm talking about. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Art Bell, Somewhere in Time on Premier Radio Networks. Tonight, an encore presentation of Coast to Coast AM from February 24th, 2000.
I'll find some crowded avenues, though it will be empty without you. Can't get used to losing you, no matter what I try to do. Gonna live my whole life through loving you. Since you're gone and hot, can't get used to losing you. What I try to do.
No woman gonna tear me down. I just gotta be rambling on. I'm thinking, sweet on the far side of the hill. Now there ain't nobody in the whole wide world gonna stop me. I'm just a good loving, rambling man. Hey buddy, can you spare me a dime? Hear me crying at the green on the far side of the hill.
I said. That's seated in front of us.
Radio Networks presents Art Bell, Somewhere in Time. Tonight's program originally aired February 24th, 2000.
It is indeed, and Seth Shostak, who is talking to you from Arecibo in the control room. That's the very same Arecibo you saw in the movie Contact. And his partner has, no, there she is. She's back in the photograph again. Because we've got a live webcam, actually a pair of them. Steadicam A and Steadicam B. Looking right at them as we conduct the interview tonight, which will resume in a moment. All right, once again, the same discussion for a second. That is, everybody listening, nobody transmitting. And I play around on the 6-meter band, too, and that has rare openings. But they happen, and everybody's sitting there listening, waiting for a signal. And save the occasional beacon that you can find that's on 24 hours, letting you know when the band really does open, if you're lucky enough to hear it. You know, everybody's listening, and a lot of times when you'll transmit, you'll suddenly get an answer, but only because you transmitted.
Well, Art, I think that's a pretty good argument for transmitting, and people have made that argument. They've also said that one of the advantages of making a deliberate transmission is that you might learn something about how to improve your receiving experiment, because you'll know some of the problems involved in building a transmitter that stays on for long periods of time, that has a lot of power, that should be directed at nearby stars, all that sort of stuff. So
something the Defense Department could use.
Right. Well, there could be truth in that. But
I know what it takes to get funding.
Yeah. Now, I hear you, what you're saying about 10 meters, and it sounds like the band's dead, but in fact, all that's happening is everybody sitting around. I have to say my own experience isn't quite the same. You know, if I get invited to a party and it sounds like it's going to be pretty dull, you know, I might suggest to my wife, well, I'll go to the party, but I'm not going to talk to anyone. And how often is it that you go to a party like that and nobody talks because they've all made this kind of deal? So, you know, it may be the case, but remember, unlike Jill just passed me a note here. Wait a minute, transmitting makes no sense unless you're prepared to do it forever. Well, that's another point, but we'll get on that in a moment. I just think there are probably lots of good reasons why you might want to transmit that we haven't even thought of.
May I please ask your partner's name again?
It's Jill Tarter.
Jill Tarter.
Jill Tarter.
Okay, everybody, you can see Jill in the photograph with Seth. And actually, the movie, I think we've got Seth seated in front of what is.
Jill's been doing, how long has he been doing she's embarrassed to say 20 years. I think she's being modest there, but it's 25. It's going up.
25 years.
Yes.
All right. Well,
she has, I believe, done more SETI observing than any other humanoid. So,
well, please tell Jill it's a real honor to even be talking to you with her being next to her.
Okay, I'll tell her that. Because it's a real honor, Jill, that you're in this thing. It's obviously an honor for me, but to be 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 an honor
You'd have to transmit forever, she said.
Well, that's another problem here. But of course, you know, what you're doing is you're putting this burden on the aliens. If people are, should we say, suppose the aliens turn on their transmitters and they beam at you for a couple hours, and then they go to lunch and turn it off. Right? They go, QTH or something, and turn off their transmitter for a while. Well, we're never going to find transmitters like that. It's sort of like flash bulbs popping off all around the galaxy. The chances that you're looking in the direction of a flash bulb when it fires are pretty darn small.
Well, that tells you and everybody else how much of a chance our great big 3-minute transmission in the 70s has.
Well, that's right. Exactly right. So what you have to hope is that there are some transmitters out there that are on long periods of time. Now, that's not so unreasonable. I mean, our television transmitters, for example, and our radio stations are on 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. But nonetheless, this has only been going on for a few decades or, maybe 50 years.
Oh, and then back to the movie. You remember the opening sequence was unparalleled. I still sit and marvel at it, and it's just incredible in context, that opening sequence, as it pans back from Earth. And so, this is an honest question for you. With our radio and our television and all this RF noise emanating from Earth, microwave, all of it, as you pan back, if the movie had been realistic, where would it finally have faded out to nothing?
Well, the only signals that really make it into space are the kind of the high frequency ones, things above about 100 megahertz. So that means FM, that means television, that means radar.
That's right.
And, everybody knows we started television broadcasting seriously in the 1940s. So that indication that we're here, the fact that Earth has not just life, but intelligent life, that's reached out, 60 light years?
60 light years.
Roughly.
Okay.
And that's, the distance to the nearest star is on the order of 4 or 5 light years.
I think we've got Seth seated in front of one. All right, then this question. Realistically, at 60 light years from Earth right now, would those transmissions be detectable, realistically?
Well, you'd have to work at it. I worked this out actually once. What it would take to pick up the carrier wave from the early I Love Lucy broadcast.
Right.
Just not to see a Lucy, not to hear Lucy, just to pick up the carrier so you know there was a television signal there.
Gotcha.
And you'd need a couple of thousand acres covered with Yankee antennas if you were 60 light years away. Years away. That's a pretty big antenna, of course, but it's not an impossible antenna. I mean, if you're serious about it, or if you've got this antenna in space or something, and you have some way of building really large antennas, you could do it. But you would do much better at that distance to try and look for our military radars, which began to appear in the 1950s. They're a lot more conspicuous.
So they'd probably notice those at 60 light years.
They would?
Or 50 or 40 or whenever we got the big ones go.
Right, and in fact, if you remember in Contact, Carl Sagan put this civilization, I guess it was at Vega anyhow, at a distance that just allowed enough time for the 1936 broadcast of the Olympics in Berlin to get to these aliens and for their signal to get back to us.
And so there was Hitler.
Yes, exactly. Well, now, mind you, maybe the aliens are judging us by Lucy, or perhaps Mr. Ed. I don't know.
Then we're going to be wiped out. 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 Anyway, the honest truth is there could be signals. Certainly radar, pulsing high output radar would be detectable at 60 or 50 or 40 light years out.
It's certainly detectable. It takes a pretty big antenna. Now, I can give you maybe a more interesting number. We obviously have no idea what sort of setup the aliens have. We haven't had contact with them. We can't ask them what sort of transmitter and antenna they're using, the way a ham would do.
Right.
But suppose they have an antenna just like the one that's right outside the window here, the Arecibo antenna. And suppose they're 100 light years away.
Okay.
We would be able to pick up that signal with this system that you're looking at here if their transmitter power is 10,000 watts. And 10,000 watts is probably less power than most of the stations that are carrying your program.
That's right. You're exactly right. So that's within reason.
It is within reason. That's why this experiment is interesting, in fact. It's not so hard to send signals from one star to the next.
All right, so then the criticism, I think we got Seth seated in front of what criticism isn't.
Well, I certainly don't think so. Certainly not on that basis. The criticism usually isn't with the technology. The criticism usually is of the kind that we were discussing in the last hour. Things like, well, how many planets are out there that are kind of like the Earth? Or how many of those kinds of planets would have life? Or, even more controversial, just because you have life, are you going to cook up intelligent life that's going to build radio transmitters? That's a pretty unanswered question. And we don't have a lot of insight into that. It happened here, but keep in mind, if the dinosaurs hadn't been wiped out 65 million years ago, there'd still be dinosaurs in Puerto Rico and not people.
Maybe. I don't know if that's a whole separate argument, but at least it certainly is possible, and the fact that we are here says it's possible. I guess I've got to stand by that argument. We are here, we are doing it, therefore, in my mind, it should be happening somewhere else if life is out there, and I really err on the side strongly that life is out there. I believe it is.
Yeah, well, obviously I agree, and everybody who does this sort of work also agrees. We wouldn't do it otherwise. If astronomy taught us nothing else in the past 450 years, it's taught us that every time we thought we were special, we were wrong.
Well, here, since you brought up possibly being wrong, everybody believes that the speed of light cannot be exceeded. Now, if that was wrong somehow, that the speed of light can indeed be exceeded in some manner, then the equation radically changes. If it doesn't take, say, 20,000 years to get to your destination, but if you could do it virtually instantly or close to, then you've got a whole different ballgame, right?
That's correct.
All right, there are a lot of theoretical physicists right now that are talking about the possibility of, if we have enough power, and it would take a very great deal of power indeed, that it might be possible to utilize the services of a wormhole, a black hole. It might be possible to actually warp space and time, and perhaps not deliver a human being, but perhaps deliver a
somehow warp space in front or contract space in front and expand space behind it.
Correct.
And get somewhere in a gray furry. Now, the trouble is that the calculations suggest that
I think we've got that seated in front of what
is absolutely enormous.
and unattainable right now.
And yes. Now, who's to say? I mean, arguments that say it's possible but we can't do it are usually the kind of arguments that don't hold up very well because normally 100 years later you can do it.
Exactly, and so then if we are to suppose there could be a civilization millions, if not billions of years ahead of us, they would have solved that one a long time ago.
Well, it may be, but it's kind of, there may be some limits on how much energy you can get together in one spot. I don't know. The sun does a pretty good job, but you need more energy than the sun produces, for example. Pretty heavy duty. It's a million, billion watts.
Well, Dr. Kaku from the City of New York University, who's a theoretical physicist, says there are several types of civilizations. I'm sure you've heard him speak. And that as you move from a type 0 that he says we are now to a type 1, you begin type 1, type 2 to control the power of the sun, and then even more, 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 and then even more.
Yeah.
So that if they were able to do that, it might be possible they could virtually dump a signal in close proximity to us or to some other sun or planet that we would get suddenly.
Yes. This idea of various civilizations, I think Michio Kaku may have been referring to work of a Russian physicist by the name of Kardashev, who said, look, there are probably three kinds of alien civilizations out there.
Yes.
There's type 1 that uses the resources of its planet.
That's correct.
That's where we are. We burn coal, we burn gasoline, we use the resources of our planet. Type 2 uses the resources of its sun, of its star, uses all the resources of its stars.
Yes.
So those 100 million billion watts of energy that the sun's pumping out, instead of just going out to the night sky to make a small pinpoint of light in somebody else's star system, try and harness that energy.
Right.
Okay, so that's a type 2 civilization. Then the type 3 civilizations, which we're talking about, well, you might be talking about type 2, but there's also a type 3 that Kardashev proposed, and those were the aliens or whatever that could harness the energy of an entire galaxy, right, with 100 billion stars in it.
So you could virtually create a wormhole, do whatever you wanted.
If you could marshal that kind of energy, yes, I think you could. And so the question is, if civilizations are out there that have gotten to that stage, shouldn't we see the evidence?
Oh, not necessarily. Not yet. You never know when that signal might arrive. In other words, if they could send the signal, and there's still lots of targets out there, and it doesn't mean they've gotten around all the targets yet.
Well, that's true. That may be, but
I think we've got Seth seated in front of one.
As it were, organized all the energy in a galaxy somehow. Then you would expect that if you took a picture of that galaxy, it would look a little different, that they somehow herded up all the stars or did something, or put a big shell around a lot of stars.
Yeah.
This may be very naive, of course. I admit it. It may be very naive, but it's hard to tell whether we see any evidence of really big astro-engineering projects, which are the kind of thing you're talking about. We tend always to interpret things we see as natural phenomena first, and only when that fails do we consider that it might be something else.
Occam's razor.
That's right.
Well, okay, fine. But still a possibility that, in other words, that one day a signal that you would hear, instead of traversing 20,000 light years, hopped across in some spectacular manner and got here very quickly. You could, it is within the realm of possibility that you could get that kind of surprise.
It's certainly possible, yeah. Now, mind you, it's not such a concern to me that signals that we're looking for here, we assume, are traveling at the speed of light, right? Because, you know, even the farthest star in the Milky Way galaxy, on the other side of the galaxy, right? The other side of town, as it were. The other side of town is 100,000 light years away. And, you know, that's a bit of a distance.
It's 100,000 years to get there at the speed of light.
Yeah, it took 100,000 years to get here. So this is kind of old news, but for us it's still new news. I feel like reading Julius Caesar. That's old news, but it's still interesting. But this is 100,000 years old. But that's okay, because the galaxy, right, is 100 times that old. So, you know, there's been plenty of time for those guys to have developed and sent that signal. I mean, you don't have to worry about that.
Right.
So, in some sense, the speed of transmission is not a big concern, except if you want to have a conversation. And if you want to have a conversation, and these guys are, say, 1,000 light years away, you say hello, and then 2,000 years you get back, you know, repeat that.
Hello there.
Yeah.
It'd be very disappointing, wouldn't it? Obviously, more would be sent. Or I guess it would be. Now, if we were to receive a signal, we always talk about this, the politics of reception. The politics of transmission is interesting enough, but the politics of reception is also very interesting. What we would do as a planet, what our societies would do, what the UN would do, whoever ended up controlling all this, how they would react if we did receive a signal. I guess you haven't thought about that, haven't you?
We have thought about that. In fact, yeah, there's quite a bit of thought about that. It's an interesting subject, of course, because I think we've got Seth seated in front of one who feel that if we were to pick up a signal, that information would somehow be kept from the public. And, you know, that some nefarious federal agency would swoop down here on the control room and shut it all down.
I believe that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I believe that. It wouldn't be that much different than the movie. You'd have guys in there with guns.
Yeah, well, they don't know the difficulties of the local roads, that's for sure. But, see, the reason I don't believe that is because, to begin with, remember, this is not like hiding some sort of evidence, right, that we've got.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's like hiding some sort of evidence.
Yeah, but this evidence is up in the sky, see?
Well, sure.
And that means that anybody else with an antenna can go find it, too.
Well, if they know where to look, I mean, you've been looking for a long time, unless it were the big thumper that Jody found. But darn it, it's the top of the hour again, so hold on, Doctor. Professor, we'll be right back. 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 Professor Seth Shostak from SETI, actually at Arecibo right now, is my guest, and there's lots more to do.
Somewhere in time, tonight featuring a replay of Coast to Coast AM from February 24th, 2000.
when you need me, darling, can't you hear the love you gave me, nothing else can save me, and so when you're gone, how can I even try to go on? When you're gone, oh, I try, how can I get me up, you seem so far away, though you were standing near. You made me feel like the something died, I fear.
I think we've got Seth seated in front of one.
Somewhere in time on Premier Radio Networks. Tonight, an encore presentation of Coast to Coast AM from February 24th, 2000.
There is never going to be another ABBA. Never. You know, they recently turned down $1 billion. That's right, with a B, $1 billion to go on a world tour. And I think, frankly, wisely so, because they wouldn't sound like this. They wouldn't look the way they did. They wouldn't be ABBA, except in name. What an incredible group. Anyway, my guest is the Honorable Professor Seth Shostak, and he's actually down at Arecibo, and we've got webcams up right now. Well, that's kind of interesting. I can see Seth taking a break. He's got, looks like, a cup of coffee in his hand and walking away from one of the computer consoles. And in the other photograph, I can see actually two people, Seth and I guess Jody. Actually, Jill Tarter. Now, we're talking about politics of reception. I'll clarify that in a moment. We'll talk more about it. Coming right up. Don't touch that, 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 touch that. All right, back now to Puerto Rico, all the way to Puerto Rico, and Professor Shostak. Seth, I want to take a moment to compliment, you know, you see an awful lot of webcams out there across the world now, and 99% of them look awful, and they don't have the right lighting, and they're not sharp, and or they're, you know, just unsatisfactory. But I must say, yours is spectacular. Somebody really went to a lot of trouble to get that webcam set up just right.
Well, I hope they're listening, Art. There's a couple of engineers connected with the project who indeed set everything up with the framing and, you know, well, all the technical things that had to be done. And actually, if you were here in the control room where you could look up at the ceiling, you would see that I've put up pieces of paper sort of taped to the lighting fixtures here in order to improve the lighting somewhat to make the photography look a little bit better. So we've tried.
Now, there is a little creature extending from the top of a computer directly above your head in one of the photographs. What is that?
Yes, that's Tigger here. That was put in by one of the software people. I think it's a mascot, but occasionally it sticks out of the top of my head, and then I start getting emails that there's an alien growing out of my scalp.
By the way, how do people email you? Is that something you wish to give out or wish to avoid giving out?
No, I've done that actually before on your show. 2 years ago, I think, Art. You asked about my email address, and as an experiment, I just gave it out to see what would happen.
What happened?
I got a lot of email. But I'll be happy to give it out again. And
I think we've got Seth seated in front of what? SETH.
At SETI, S-E-T-I,
Yes.
.org as organization.
Okay. Seth, S-E-T-H, at SETI, S-E-T-I.org. That's easy. Well, I'm sure you're going to get lots of mail with lots of comments. All right, well, look, we were talking about the politics of reception. Let's finish that one up. The Cold War is over, but we're worried about secrets leaking to China. China is building rockets. What used to be the Soviet Union is looking more like the Soviet Union these days than less. The leadership there is kind of hardcore right now. In other words, if there was a signal received, I just can't believe that we wouldn't be extremely concerned that there would not be military value in that signal. And so before we would tell the Chinese, hey, guess what? Or the Russians, hey, guess what? We'd take a, little time out and we'd have a talk about it at some very high levels. Disabuse me of that notion.
Well, okay, since you challenged me to do that. There's two lines of reasoning here. One is, first off, if we pick up a signal here, and occasionally we do, of course, before we would claim that we had found ET, we would insist that it be verified at another radio observatory. Because after all, in the end, something that might convince us could just be a bug in the software or maybe even a prank.
Okay, fine. So then maybe England, maybe Australia, but not Beijing or Moscow.
Quite right. But suppose we call up our buddies in Australia. We say, look, we're picking up this signal here, and would you mind turning your instrument in the following direction? We give them a couple of coordinates on the sky and say, look, here's a range of frequencies. We're not going to tell you the exact frequency because we don't want to bias you. We'll just give you a range and see if you find it the same spot we do. All right, all very straightforward. Now, the people we're going to call in Australia will be, another set of astronomers. Astronomers are not very good at keeping secrets. They're not used to that, and nobody ever told them to keep secrets. Keep secrets. So there they are, down in, say, Australia, looking at this thing, and they're finding it too. So that means that immediately they're all on their email systems.
Sure.
And telling all their relatives.